Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
On a family cruise, the husband recognizes this and today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy it! Wow, Zoe and I have been married for 5 years. It seems like just yesterday I asked her to become my bride. My name is Eric, and I am one of the luckiest guys on earth. In college, I studied stocks and investments. I think I did well because 12 years later, I became a millionaire. I met Zoe when she came for an interview for a secretary position. Our agency has grown by leaps and bounds. I partnered with Brad in an investment firm. Brad graduated with me and became an excellent partner in our small but profitable firm. We hired Zoe about 7 years ago. She was fantastic, not only in appearance but also in mind. She became my right hand and then my wife. Brad's wife, Amy, was a housewife. They had 2 children under the age of 5. I wanted to do something special for Zoe and our 5th anniversary, so I bought us 4 tickets for a week-long cruise to the Bahamas. Zoe was thrilled, and when I told her I bought tickets for Brad and Amy, she was even more excited. It's nice to go somewhere with close friends. The 4 of us were very close, not cute or anything, we just went somewhere together a lot. I guess you could say that Brad and I were not just partners but best friends. I've dated a lot in my life. I was an ordinary-looking guy, but I had brains. Believe me, many girls like smart guys. I had a normal build, not fat, not thin. In general, my appearance was not my best feature, but I had brains. You see, I have a photographic memory. If I read or hear something, it accumulates somewhere in my head, so that helped me remember everything the girl told me. Who do you think the students turned to when they had problems with their studies? I spent many nights helping girls with homework while they were in their pajamas. I spent a lot of time at parties. I thought that I would probably never get married because there were so many women and I loved them all equally, at least until Zoe came into my life. With Zoe, everything was different. It was love at first sight. I've never felt this way about anyone. Zoe, for me, was the ideal woman, gorgeous appearance, perfect figure, and legs all the way to her 5th place. I know it may seem strange, but that's how I saw them. I mean, she was special among women. Her personality was perfect for me. We started dating the moment I hired her. There was no place we wouldn't go together. We were like 2 peas in a pod. I didn't hang out with the guys, and Zoe hosted girls' nights. She also went to a local gym to stay in shape. If we had free time, we spent it together. We were very close. Before I met Zoe, I dated many women. I had an intimate relations with most of them, so I was not new to lovemaking. I was willing to try anything with my women. With Zoe, I felt different from the very beginning. I fell in love with her so much. Whether there was a night or not, I didn't care. Seeing her, being close to her, looking at her smile, or hearing her laugh brought me great joy. I hope I was able to explain my feelings for her. I have heard people say that they are so in love, but I never believed them. I guess I thought it was a phase that people went through, but with Zoe, it was real. I think you need it to happen to you so you can know that feeling. Zoe was my life. I trusted her completely. I explained my feelings to Zoe. She said she felt the same about me and didn't want any other man but me. About 1.5 years later, we got married. As I said, life was wonderful. Our intimate life couldn't be better. We hung out a lot. We even went to beaches together. Most people don't know much about beaches. Usually, these are mostly middle-aged and older couples. Sometimes, they have children with them. As a rule, older people with not the most beautiful bodies rested there. Some are sun worshippers, others just love to lie without clothes on the beach and sunbathe. After you see 100 without anything bodies on the beach, the surprise usually wears off. Every now and then, you might see a few people trying to look at all the nudity. Most are asked to leave or quickly sit down and calmly look around. Zoe, have you ever thought about intimate with other men? I asked somehow. No, this body belongs only to you. Yes, I like intimate, but with you, it's more than that. I never want to lose you. The love we have can never be replaced by me letting another guy have me. I love you, Eric, and only you. If you want me to dress differently or not go without clothes, then all you have to do is say so. I always thought that you wanted to show me off and let people know that I belonged only to you, she answered. She was right. Whenever other men looked at her, I was proud and at the same time knew that she was mine, only mine. Brad and Amy are a lot like us when it comes to intimate awareness. They also went with us to nudist beaches. Amy also has a good figure, but after having a couple of children, she is no longer in the same category as Zoya. For a woman who had 2 children, she still looked great. Brad and I often joked with the girls about trading, but neither of us ever went through with it. Apart from kissing, we never touched each other's wives. The 4 of us had a great connection. We could go anywhere, do anything, and not have to worry. It was a real friendship. I know that many people probably find it difficult to understand our way of life. We showed off, but we were completely monogamous. We went on a cruise, leaving Ohio and flying first class to Florida, where we would board our cruise ship. We were excited, and the girls were being frivolous the whole time. We had separate rooms on the ship. I was going to make love to Zoya every night. We've done it before Brad and Amy, and they've done it before us. This was never planned. Perhaps it was a camping trip in a shared tent. We usually liked privacy while making love. Having settled in, we decided to explore the ship. It had everything: a swimming pool, lots of gambling, a huge dining area, and 3 snack bars where you could buy something at any time, day or night. There was also 24-hour room service. Of course, there was a lot of alcohol scattered throughout the ship. We headed to the welcome lounge where we were all welcomed on board. Drinks were free, and we all had our share of drinks before heading off for another tour of the ship. There were 3 entertainment areas. The first 2 hosted most of the events. The third entertainment area was for guests without anything only. The only exception was that if a woman had her period, she could wear shorts or a bathing suit bottom. It's funny that for many women, their period falls during the rest period. I believe they were a little shy, and this policy just gave them an excuse. We decided to go up and sunbathe a little. They had a steward at the entrance explaining the rules. He gave each of us a clothes basket and a locker key on a bracelet since no one had pockets. Brad and I looked around at the people while the girls undressed. There were some pretty good-looking women there, but when Zoya and Amy came out, most eyes turned to them. We watched as they walked past a lot of people and sat down next to us. Hell, it even got a little hard for me watching my wife and Amy approach us. We all relaxed and sunbathed for about an hour. We ordered drinks and just had fun. I saw 2 guys sitting not far from us. I could tell they kept looking in our direction. It seemed a little strange that 2 guys were there alone. Perhaps their wives didn't know they were there. Things like this happen often. Men leave their wives and look at other women. Towards evening, Zoya and I were sitting on the deck of the ship. I remember telling her how beautiful it was, peace and quiet, no bustle of big cities. I remember telling her that I would like to move here someday and live. In the distance, we could see all the different islands. If Zoya were next to me, it would be an ideal life. She told me how much she liked it too, peaceful and beautiful. There is nothing better than this. In the evening, after dinner, we went down to one of the bars and ordered drinks. We danced a bit and chatted with other cruise people, listening to their stories. We were sitting at a large table where many of us were talking when 2 men we had seen earlier that day asked if they could join our table. Of course, we didn't mind. When they sat down, they introduced themselves as Jim Harley and Bob Fritz. This is where my memory is great. I remember everything they told us. Most of it was bragging, but you can also find out a lot of facts like where they are from, their job, etc. Jim was an insurance salesman and won 2 tickets to this cruise for the highest sale price in insurance. In fact, his name was pulled out of a hat. He was just lucky. We asked him if he was married, and he told us that he and his wife had argued, so he asked Bob to join him on the cruise. Bob also worked as an insurance agent and had been divorced for about 2 years. These 2 guys seemed nice enough, but they seemed to have had a couple of screwed-up lives. Zoya was flirting as usual as Jim and Bob were paying her a lot of attention. All Brad and I told the guys was that we were investors. We never discussed our financial situation. Of course, Jim and Bob weren't interested in us anyway, they liked our wives. But we knew that they would not achieve anything with them. They were quite cautious, but they didn't even ask the girls to dance. I was a little surprised. Finally, we said goodnight to everyone. We told them the boat would dock after lunch and that Brad and I were going to go snorkeling. Of course, the girls said they were going to work on their tans. Zoya and I spent the night alone. Eric, I love you so much. There will never be anyone else for me but you, she said. She was my woman. I would rather die if I couldn't be with her. She was everything to me. The next morning, we sensed the cruise ship docking. The cruise director told us that we would be docked most of the day and would be back on the water later that evening. Brad and I kissed our women and told them we were heading to the scuba diving group. They were going to the beach to spend the day swimming and sunbathing. As they headed towards the beach, we headed towards the snorkeling boat. They provided all the equipment and had instructors who showed us how to do it. We spent most of the day learning to snorkel. When we finished, we went to look for the girls. We walked up and down the beach, but they were nowhere to be found. We asked the attendant if there was another beach, and he replied that there was a nudist beach on the other side of the hill. It was only a couple of 100 yards away but was blocked by boulders and a hill, so the non-nudists couldn't see inside. This worried me a little because Zoya never took her clothes off without me. I was kind of her protector. Anyway, Brad and I made it to the entrance of the nudist beach and saw Amy smiling at us. "Where's Zoya, Amy?" I asked her. "Oh, she's about 100 yards from the beach. I needed to go to the bathroom and I was going to get us something to drink," she replied. "Why didn't she go with you?" "I don't like her being here alone," I said. "Oh, we are not alone. Jim and Bob were here and came over recently to chill with us until you guys got back. While we were in the water, Zoya got a cramp in her leg and said she would just wait for me while I went to get some water. The guys helped her get back to our blanket. I didn't like it at all. I told Brad and Amy I'd go get Zoya while they waited for their drinks. I had a bad feeling about this. I looked at the beach. There weren't many people on the nudist beach. I spotted 2 men and a woman about 100 yards away. I ran towards them. Yes, it was Zoya. What were they doing? God, no. No, this can't be. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me across the sand. When I got there, a fight broke out between me and these 2 guys. Brad and Amy came running towards us. Brad later told me that it was no use chasing Jim and Bob alone, so he stopped to help me. Zoya came up to me to tell me how sorry she was. "Get away from me," I told her. Honestly, I've never talked to her like that. Brad then helped me up, and we left the beach and headed back to the boat and to the aid station. As far as I know, Amy and Zoya gathered their things and headed back to their rooms. I told Brad to keep her away from me right now. I was confused about what I was going to do. Brad left me at the dispensary with the doctor and returned to check on the women. He came back later, and I told him to take the women and go to dinner. I'd contact him later. He asked me what I was going to do. He knew me like no one else. I did not answer him but repeated my instructions. "Eric, don't do anything you'll regret. Please take time to cool down a bit. Brad, you didn't catch Amy cheating. I was the one who caught Zoya. I don't know if I can live with this. Please leave now. I'll talk to you later." I went to my room and packed my bag. I left Zoya a note saying I never wanted to see her again. I just couldn't handle her betrayal. I still loved her, but part of me was dead now. I went to the captain of the cruise ship and told him I wanted to leave. He tried to argue with me, but in the end, he allowed me to leave the ship. It was the only port I could get off that had an airport. I took a taxi to the airport and bought a ticket home. On the way home, I had plenty of time to think. It took me a few extra hours due to a plane connection I had to make. I came home beaten, both outside and inside. When I entered, the house was dark and gloomy. No Zoya. The marriage broke up. There was no point in continuing. I know most people don't understand this. I don't understand them either. I would rather be shot than see Zoya with another man. It was so bad. I was lost and devastated. I pulled out a bottle of Kentucky bourbon and started drinking. The phone started ringing, and from the caller ID, I knew it was a seat-to-land call. It was probably Zoya or Brad. I let the answering machine take the call. "Eric, if you are there, please pick up the phone. This is Brad. We need to talk. Zoya is a complete mess. We won't be able to get off the ship until it lands in 4 days. Please pick up if you are there." I picked up the phone. "Brad, I need to tell you something." "Eric, thank God you're safe at home. We were very worried about you. We contacted the ship's captain, and he said you left the ship. What's going on?" "Brad, I'm divorcing Zoya and will probably leave the company tomorrow. I will meet with a lawyer and prepare all the papers. They will be on your desk when you return. My share in the business will go to Zoya. I hate her for what she did to me, but deep down, I will always love her. Eric, you can't just leave. God, man, give yourself some time. I'm sure you and Zoya can handle it. She loves you." "Yes, that's right. She loves me so much that she cheated on me with another man on our anniversary. I can't stand this kind of love. Anyway, I don't want to talk anymore now. I have things I need to do." "What are you doing, Eric? Please wait until we get home and sort this out." I just hung up. In fact, I even turned off the answering machine. I reached into my dresser drawer and pulled out my Luger. It was my father's gun, which he gave me many years ago. I sat there drinking bourbon and cleaning the Luger. I was so tired that I walked over to the sofa and passed out. I really thought about stopping this life and ending it all, but I needed to know more. In fact, my memory started working overtime. I chose the path of revenge. I did not care. The next morning, I went to the lawyer's office. I told him what I wanted, and he didn't ask any personal questions about what I was doing. He was an old friend of ours who had been with us since we opened our doors. I know he wanted to say something, but he knew I meant what I said. I asked him to draw up a divorce decree for me and Zoe. By decree, I transferred half of my participation in the business to Zoe. I also gave all our property to Zoe. The house itself cost about $2 million, less than we owed on it, not counting the furniture. Where I was going, I didn't need any of this. I withdrew $750,000 from our assets. This was the majority of our savings, and I had to cash out some of our shares. The lawyer was supposed to give the documents to Zoe and Brad as soon as they returned from the cruise. We had offices in Ohio and Illinois. We had the best people in leadership positions. Brad and I would go to the Illinois branch once a month to check the records and see how they were doing. After Zoe joined our firm, we sent Zoe to Illinois. She enjoyed the reprieve from her regular job. We had a lot of good people working for us. This is one of the reasons we were able to go away for a week and know the business was in good hands. I went home and packed 2 suitcases with the most necessary things. 2 days later, I walked into our office, and everyone was surprised that I came back. They saw that I was involved in a fight. They asked what happened and inquired about Brad, Amy, and Zoe. I just told them that I was beaten and the doctor said it would be better if I went home and rested. They didn't need to know the truth. I tried to put on a happy face, but it was damn near impossible. I told them all that I was going away for a while, but Brad would be back in a couple of days. Nobody questioned me. After all, I was the boss, or at least one of them. I called the travel agency and asked them to book me a ticket. I used the company computer and transferred most of my money and savings to a bank in the Bahamas. I drove my Mercedes to the Illinois branch. In fact, this was done as a cover. I walked in and saw the people who worked there. They were surprised to see me. It was nice to know that I caught everyone at work. When you have well-performing employees, you feel very good. Of course, we paid them well. They asked about Zoe and how she was doing. The people at this branch really liked her. They said she liked one of the fitness clubs there. She went there to train every time she came to the office. During her office visits, she never mentioned to me that she was working out. I wonder why. I decided to visit the health club and find out a little more. When I got there, I realized that something was wrong. It was a health club. I was asked if I was a participant, and I replied that my wife is a member of their club and I am thinking about joining. I told them Zoe's name, and the manager smiled. He mentioned that she was a very nice woman, but I noticed a slight smirk on his face. I asked for a tour of the premises, and a beautiful young woman showed me to a private changing room. I was told that I could go on the tour, but that I would have to take off my clothes as it would make other participants uncomfortable. My companion was a young lady named Rain. From this, I knew that I could probably get a lot of information from her. I asked her why she had clothes on while I had to be without clothes. She smiled and said, "I work here, Mr. Burke, but if you want, I'll take my clothes off too." She took off her clothes and had a beautiful, slender body. I couldn't help but stare at her. She said she could take care of me for a fee. I told her that I would look pretty stupid on the tour dressed like that. "How much does it cost to relieve my stress?" I asked her. Hell, I haven't been with another woman since I married Zoe. I was torn between loving her and wanting revenge. "Fine, I'll give you more if you do this and answer a few questions about Zoe. We shouldn't talk about the other members, but since it's your wife, I think it's okay. Just don't tell the boss I told you." "I need a job that's fun and pays well," she replied. "Call me Eric. I think we're pretty close friends now." "Do you know Zoe very well?" I asked. "I've seen her for the last couple of years. She comes and uses the facilities and has made a lot of friends." "Are your friends men or women?" "Both men and women. She is a very attractive woman. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I was with her too." "Yes, I know she loves women as much as men." I lied. I had no idea Zoe was like this. "I saw the look on your boss's face. I bet he enjoyed being with her too." "Yes, he slept with her too. Jim, Harley, and Bob Fritz belong to this club too," I said. "Yeah, they're kind of, how should I put it, guys who come just to find a girl to have an intim with. They always came when Zoe was here, and she paid for a private room. The three of them were there." "Eric, you are one of the nicest men to ever come here. You treated me not like a woman of easy virtue, but rather like a woman. Zoe is a happy woman to have a man like you. Not every guy would share such a beautiful woman like her." "I couldn't believe I did it with someone other than Zoe," I said. "Rent that. I'll probably join her next time in town." Of course, I had no intention of returning to Chicago. I went to a Mercedes dealership and told them I wanted to sell my car. They were surprised until I told them that I wouldn't need it anymore because I was moving abroad. I was practically robbed in the deal, but I received at least half the value. I took a taxi to the airport. On the way, I asked the taxi driver to stop at a sporting goods store to buy a baseball cap and a baseball bat. He thought it was a little weird, but who cares what he thinks? When I got to the airport, the taxi driver checked my bags. I still had the Luger on me, and I didn't want to get caught with it in the terminal. At first, the taxi driver refused, but a tip of $100 convinced him otherwise. He handed me the luggage tickets. I took the baseball bat and asked him to drop me off at the long-term parking lot. I got out of the taxi, gave him another $20, and told him that he had never seen me. Now it was time to carry out my plan. The two guys, Jim and Bob, were from Illinois. Their plane was due to arrive in the next half hour. When I called to book my flight, I asked when the return flight was due to arrive. Then I looked in the Chicago phone book, found the name Jim Harley, and called him. His wife answered, and I asked when Jim was due back from the Bahamas. She said, "I don't care if that man ever comes back. If you need insurance, you should go somewhere else. I'm married to him, and I'm telling you what's going to happen. As soon as he gets home, I'll bombard him with divorce papers. It should be this afternoon. Sorry if I offended you, sir, but what kind of husband takes a friend on a cruise instead of his wife? Now I find out that he also has a girlfriend here in town, and I should just shoot that idiot." I thanked her and quickly hung up. Maybe I should just let her deal with him, I thought. My problem now was what kind of car they had. They mentioned that they parked at the far end of the long-term parking lot so they could practice. I really think it was because it's cheaper. So I walked to the back of the lot wearing a baseball cap, with a baseball bat in my hand and gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. About half an hour later, I saw two guys with their suitcases walking towards the back of the parking lot near where I was. They laughed and did not pay any attention to what was happening. I attacked them. Then I boarded a plane back to the Bahamas. I arrived and took a taxi to my hotel, a really beautiful place. I wished I had Zoe to share this with. I spent the next couple of days just thinking about what I was going to do. I found myself drinking and thinking about Zoe every day. I became more and more depressed. I had to do something, or I wouldn't have made it. I decided to call Brad. "Eric, where are you?" "According to the administrator, you are in the Bahamas." "What's going on?" "Eric, the lawyer came and said that you are giving half of your business assets to Zoe. I talked to her today, and she left home after you left her on the cruise. She never left her room. She didn't even talk to me, just Amy telling her to eat so she would eat. Amy said all she wanted was to cry. Talk to her, Eric. I'm scared of what she might do. I can't see her, Brad. I just cannot. Every time I see her in my dreams, she cheats. A big part of me is dead, and if I don't find something to do, the rest of me will probably follow. I do not understand this. You can't live without Zoe, and she can't live without you, but right now you're both 1,000 miles away from each other, Brad said. Anyway, Brad, I'm thinking about staying here. I was thinking about opening an office here. There are many clients here, and people are on vacation. Plus, all the business. What do you think? Eric, you stopped by the Illinois office, didn't you? Yes, I came in to reserve a table. Why do you ask? It appears that 2 men got off the plane and were beaten. People from our office in Illinois sent us a copy of the newspaper, he said. Brad, why are you interested in the robbery that happened at the Illinois airport? The 2 men were Jim and Bob. Our office staff found this interesting because the 2 men had just returned from a cruise to the Bahamas. According to the newspaper, they have no idea who the attacker was, other than that he was wearing a baseball cap and carrying a bat. They say he also had a pistol, possibly a Luger. Your father gave you a Luger, didn't he, Eric? Yes, I got rid of it a while ago. Glad to hear those 2 idiots got what they deserved. Did Zoe see the article? Yes, and she thinks you attacked them and is worried about you. Well, it wasn't me. By the way, tell Zoe that the people at the health club in Chicago are passing on their regards. What about a business deal? Do you want me to agree? It's okay, Eric, but what you really need is here. Her name is Zoya, and she is now in another office. I can't talk to her, I just can't. I found myself crying as I hung up. I moved on and tried to get into business. I sold several accounts, although I wasn't in the mood for it. About a week later, I got a call from Brad. Eric, Zoe is gone. She hasn't appeared for 3 days. Amy came to visit her, and Zoe gave Amy power of attorney to sell the house and all the property. She told Amy that she couldn't live there without you and that she would contact her when she got to her destination. We contacted a lawyer, and she did not sign the divorce decree. She tore it up in front of him and didn't tell Amy where she was going. 3 days have passed, and we haven't heard anything from her. I heard the extension phone being picked up. Eric, I know you don't want to talk to Zoe, but I want you to listen to me. You must know the truth. Zoya was afraid you wouldn't believe her. Amy told me what Zoe said really happened that day. She said that when Zoe went to get water, those 2 took Zoya without her consent. Amy, your best friend, said Zoe lied to you. She has slept with these 2 guys and many others since we got married. She was also with several women. There was dead silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, Brad spoke. You may need to know the truth since you know so much. Amy and Zoe have been together several times. One night, I found them together, and then I had to make a choice. I either divorce Amy or join them. I joined them. She really loves you, but she loves Knight just as much. Please talk to her. Maybe the 4 of us can share our feelings with each other. They are both still in touch. Amy, you are a beautiful woman. I've always liked you. You're Brad's wife and you were my friend, but you're a liar. I'm looking for the truth here, and you start telling me nonsense. I do not want anything from you. What about you, Brad? I want to completely leave this business. I suggest you talk to Zoya and tell her to stay out of my life. I can't stand liars and cheaters. If she wants intimate, she needs to rely on you too. I hung up. There was a knock on the door. My dinner must have arrived by now. Zoe, in high school and then in college, I was popular. I knew I looked good, but I also knew there was depth beyond looks. I tried really hard to be more than just a pretty face. My grades were very good, and I made the honor roll in high school and the dean's list in college every year. My first intimate experience happened when I was 20 years old. After college, I applied for a position as an executive secretary at an investment firm. I got the position and fell in love with one of the bosses. I swear it was love at first sight. His name was Eric, and we started dating about a month after I got the job. At first, I was a little wary about dating my boss. I was afraid that we would have a night and then I would have to look for another job or constantly hold back. This was a dilemma I didn't have to worry about. Eric is the kindest, sweetest, most wonderful person I have ever known. I would die for him in a second if necessary. On the fourth date, I invited him to my house, but we didn't have an intim. After the first time with him, I didn't even think about another man. We went everywhere together. I just wanted to be with him. After dating for about a year, he asked me to marry him. I asked him if he wanted to know anything about my past. I didn't want to have any secrets from him. I remember him telling me that our past was just that, our past. He didn't care to hear about my past intimate experiences and didn't want to tell me about his. What mattered was from this day until death do us part. That's what mattered. I promised him that I would always be faithful to him. I know he liked to show me off. I didn't mind, as long as it made him happy. He said he didn't mind other men looking at me, but they weren't allowed to touch me. We even went to nudist camps, and he wasn't jealous because he knew that I was his and only his. We were rich, which was good, but I was more interested in hanging out with Eric. He bought me everything I ever wanted. I tried to dress as hot as possible for him. He even helped me choose some clothes. I trained regularly. My friend Amy would sometimes come over and we would play sports together. Life couldn't have been better for Eric and me. For our 5th wedding anniversary, Eric received 4 cruise tickets to the Bahamas. I was so happy when he told me that Brad and Amy were coming with us. These two are just like us, madly in love and hilarious as hell. Eric and I are godparents to their 2 children. The children spend a lot of time with us. We're all pretty close. We had a great time on the cruise, even though it was only our first day. My favorite part was when Eric and I sat alone on the deck and looked out at the ocean. We could see small islands, and Eric said that someday he would like to move to a place like this with me and spend the rest of our years together. It was a dream that maybe someday we would be able to realize. We also went to the nudist deck to sunbathe. Eric and Brad were smiling as Amy and I walked out on the cruise. We drank, danced, and met other people. There were 2 guys on the cruise that I had met at Health Club in Chicago. I never told Eric about the club because it was my secret. Brad told me about the health club a couple of years ago. The first time I went there, the manager showed me around, and I don't know why I did it, but I slept with him. From that day on, I would go there when visiting the Chicago office and have a night with both men and women. It wasn't love at all, just intimate with different people. One day, when I arrived there, I met Jim and Bob. They weren't interested in love, they just wanted a night. It was everything I wanted. I got worried when I saw them on the ship. I was afraid they would reveal my secret, and then Eric would divorce me. They assured me that my secret was safe with them. Damn, I trusted this man. The next day, Eric and Brad went snorkeling, and Amy and I went to the beach. It was so crowded that we could barely find a place to put a blanket, so we headed to the nudist beach. This was nothing new, we had been there many times, only with our husbands. We positioned ourselves as far away from everyone as possible, we didn't want to be stared at without our husbands. After a while, we looked up and saw Jim and Bob, two guys who had been sitting at our table the night before. I should note that Amy was my best friend, and she noticed that I was a little nervous when I saw these two guys. I confessed to her about the club in Chicago. I knew she would keep my secret. You see, Amy and I have our own secret. We have been having a night for many years. We love our husbands, but there is something special about being with another woman. One night, Brad caught us. She cried and asked him for forgiveness. I know that Brad always wanted me, but because of his friendship with Eric, he never tried. I invited him to join us if he kept our secret. After that, I had a threesome with Amy and Brad. God, I wanted Eric to be a part of this, since we were all good friends. I was afraid he wouldn't want to be a part of it and I would lose him. Amy and I went into the water, and Jim and Bob followed. While we were swimming, some guys came up to us. Amy told me she wasn't going to have an intim with them. The only person who made love to her besides Brad was me. She said she would let Eric take her, but that day had not come yet. Amy said she needed to get some water. I told her we would wait for her to come back and bring us a drink. I knew I needed to have an intimate with these two guys. I really didn't want to, but if I didn't, I knew they would tell Eric and my life would be over. I kept thinking about what a terrible mistake I had made from the very beginning, and now I was paying for it. When Eric found out everything, he didn't want to see me. I wanted to explain the truth to him, but he wouldn't even talk to me. Amy, Brad, and I went to dinner. I didn't need anything, I just sat there and thought about what Eric had been through. I was afraid I would lose him. I felt like I would die without him. During dinner, the ship set off. We had to be on the water for at least 2 days before docking again, and 5 days before the end of the cruise. I went back to my room to see how Eric was doing, but his things were missing. I rushed to Amy and Brad's cabin to tell them. I wasn't sure what had happened. We contacted the captain, who showed us the paper that Eric had signed to leave the ship. I told him that I wanted to leave too, but he told me that this was impossible as we were no longer moored. I went to my cabin and cried. I went to the ship's doctor for sleeping pills. I wanted to take the whole bottle. I was ready to end it all. I think the doctor saw that I was upset and gave me enough to help me sleep. I spent the rest of the cruise in my cabin. The only person I saw was Amy. She was a really good friend. I cried on her shoulder for hours. She told me to give it some time and maybe things would get better. When we returned home, I walked into a very lonely house. I went back to work to keep myself busy and not think about Eric. A few days later, I received a notification that I needed to see our lawyer. He handed me the divorce decree that he and Eric had drawn up. In it, Eric agreed to give me millions of dollars. I didn't want money, I wanted my Eric. I tore up the divorce papers and decided I needed to do something to get Eric back. I called Amy and gave her power of attorney to sell all of our property. I told her I was going to find Eric. She told me Eric was back in the Bahamas, but I asked her not to tell Brad that I knew. She waited 3 days before telling Brad I was missing. Brad deserved it for not telling me where Eric was. It was a vicious circle. Brad told me that the office in Illinois reported that 2 men had been severely beaten. It was Jim and Bob. I just knew that my Eric did it. I wondered if he did it out of revenge or for my sake. I found out he was in Illinois when the dealership wanted to check out the purchase of our Mercedes. I told him that my husband sold the car. I informed them that we were moving to the Bahamas, and that's where I was going. It took me 2 days to find out exactly where he was staying, and I'd booked a ticket. Approaching his room, I was scared. I knocked on the door and heard him say, "Just a minute." I overheard him on the phone with Brad just before I knocked. When Brad opened the door, he pulled out his wallet to pay for dinner. "How much do I owe you?" I asked. Opening the door, I looked up and saw Zoya, the woman I loved and hated at the same time. Large crocodile tears flowed down her cheeks. I was stunned and didn't know what to do. I had learned so much about her and her nightlife in the last few days. Now I had to deal with this. She looked at me and said, "Eric, I love you, and I lied to you. I need to tell you everything. I have so much to tell you. When I'm done, you can either make love to me or beg me to leave." It will be completely your choice. Just give me a chance before we end our life together. I'll obey whatever decision you choose. This could get interesting. She didn't know that I had found out about the health club or about Amy and Brad. Let's see if I get more lies or the truth. I invited her in, and over the next 2 hours, she told me everything about the Chicago Health Club, how she met Jim and Bob there. I couldn't believe it. She even told me about other women. She started crying and told me about Amy and then about Brad. She even said that they wanted to meet us, but she didn't want that anymore. She said she wanted to get away from this lie, but it kept getting bigger and bigger. After having an intim with Brad, she said she knew she was tied to this lie unless she told me about it and decided I would divorce her. She also told me that it was Brad who told her about the health club. I didn't know that. I thought he was probably the one who started the fight between Jim and Bob, knowing that Zoya couldn't get out of this without telling me. Eric, I love only you. I can't make you believe me. All the others were just a night that got out of hand. I want to start over if you'd give me a chance. Just you and me. We can do this, the life we talked about, and live together here in the Bahamas. I can't live without you, and I don't know what else to do. Now it's up to you whether you give me another chance or not. There was a knock on the door. It was my dinner. I had ordered Chinese, so I knew I would have something to share with Zoya. I asked her if she was hungry, and she said she hadn't eaten much since I left. She asked me about my decision, and I told her that I could not make such a decision on an empty stomach. I watched her while we ate. We didn't even talk during that period. God, she was beautiful. I still loved her, but I didn't know what I would do. I knew that, no matter what, all ties with Amy and Brad would be severed, and I would no longer have anything to do with them. But what about Zoya? We finished eating, and Zoya stood up. Eric, do you want me to take off my clothes so we can start over and make love, or do you want me to leave so you'll never see me again? Now I had to decide. Would I be happier with Zoya in my life, or would I rather never see her again? I had to make this choice. Zoya, I loved you with every fiber of my being. It was always me and you, and no one else. I wanted us to always be like this. Instead, you cheated on me over and over again. I can't live with this. I can never trust you again. Please leave now before I hurt you. I don't want to see you again. She began to cry as she approached the balcony overlooking the city. We were on the 23rd floor. She turned and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Eric, I'm so sorry. I really love you, and I can't live knowing that I'll never see you again. I know I hurt you, but I can't take it back. Please forgive me, she said, and then jumped. What do you think of our story today? If I were in my husband's shoes, I would be absolutely as distraught as my husband. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next video.